Dr. Ghollami and myself, I warmly welcome all of our distinguished guests. As you know, today we are witnessing the opening of the Conference on Iranian Islamic Civilization, Identity, Components and Historical Splendor. This is going to be a 2-day conference. The first day today is dedicated to the opening ceremony, and on the second day, tomorrow, selected papers will be presented by researchers in 2 separate panels. To begin, I would like to draw your attention to a short video clip. After that, Dr. Ilham Malekzadeh, Associate Professor at the Research Institute for Humanities and Cultural Studies and Deputy Scientific Secretary of the conference, who is joining us from Tehran, will present an online report on the activities carried out by the conference secretariat. While thanking Dr. Malekzadeh
presents an online international conference on Iranian Islamic civilization, identity, components, and historical splendor. Day 1, opening session, featuring keynote speeches by a number of distinguished Iranian and Austrian-Iranian studies scholars. Day 2, online academic panels, presentation of 15 selected papers by leading professors and researchers in Iranian studies, delivered in Persian, German, and English.
Main themes. 1. Identity and the spirit of Iranian Islamic civilization. 2. Essential components of Iranian Islamic civilization. 3. Characteristics, distinctions, and civilization turning points of Iranian Islamic civilization. 4. Iran and the question of nationality. 5. Iranian Islamic civilization unity and diversity. 6. Iranian civilization and the question of development. 7. Iran as the cradle of wisdom and philosophy. 8. The complete emergence of Iranian Islamic civilization. 9. An examination of the Iran Sharqi. 10. The reciprocal relationship between Islam and Iran.
Also featuring the presentation of the first book award in honor of Professor Bert Fragner. In addition, the launch of the book Austrian-Iran Ologists.
Date: 18 and 19th of February 2026. Venue: Iranian's Wisdom House, Vienna. Format: in person and online. Languages: Persian, German, and English.
به نام خدا و با عرض سلام خدمت استادان گرامی و بزرگوارانی که در خدمتشون هستیم و انشاءالله بتونیم در 2 روز سمینار مرتبط با تمدن ایران اسلامی، هویت، مؤلفه‌ها و شکوه تاریخی در حوزه‌های مختلف تاریخ، ادبیات، عرفان، زبان و فرهنگ‌های باستانی، همینطور تاریخ باستان ایران، تاریخ پزشکی، ایرانشناسی و حوزه‌های مرتبط با شکوه تمدن ایران در خدمتشون باشیم. ملکزاده هستم، عضو هیئت علمی پژوهشگاه علوم انسان و مطالعات فرهنگی که این افتخار رو داشتم با دعوت جناب آقای دکتر غلامی رایزن محترم جمهوری اسلامی ایران در اتریش در خصوص دعوت از استادان و متخصصان، همینطور گردآوری و دریافت مقالات بزرگوارانی که با ما همراهی خواهند داشت این مجموعه رو در واقع هماهنگ بکنیم و اینک بعد از به هر حال فراز و نشیب‌هایی که پشت سر گذاشته شد در خدمت شما باشیم. یک گزارش خیلی مجملی رو خدمتتون عرض می‌کنم که البته با توجه به شرایطی که ما باش مواجه بودیم در حالی که از 30 فروردین سال 1404 بنا بود این اقدام رقم بخوره و البته اولین گام‌ها هم برداشته شد، با بروز جنگ نابرابری که به هر حال رژیم صهیونیستی بر کشور ایران تحمیل کرد و قطع اینترنت و مسائلی که به دنبال داشت وقتی در کار افتاد، اما همت جناب رایزن و مجموعه همکاران محترمشون باعث شد که این مسئله مخفول واقع نشه و همچنان ما پیگیر باشیم که در هر حال به صورت در واقع برخط و مجازی بتونیم این کار رو برگزار بکنیم. در طی این مدت ما موفق شدیم چیزی در حدود 35 پژوهش رو دریافت بکنیم که مجموعه بررسی هایی که در اساس 3 داور برای هر مقاله انجام شد منجر به انتخاب 16 مقاله که اینک در طی پنل های مختلف در خدمت شما اونها رو ارائه خواهیم کرد تونستیم از بین اونها انتخاب بکنیم و در اینجا به مرحله ارائه سخنرانی برسیم. از مجموعه افراد و در واقع محققانی که با ما همکاری کردن، علاوه بر استادانی که از ایران قبول زحمت کردن و آثار خودشون رو برای دبیرخانه ارسال کردن، ما از کشورهای ترکیه، اتریش، آلمان و کانادا هم مقالاتی رو دریافت کردیم که در رشته‌های مختلف تاریخ ادبیات، جامعه شناسی، تاریخ پزشکی، تاریخ باستان، زبان و فرهنگ‌های باستانی و مطالعات منطقه‌ای ایران فرهنگی، اینها در محورهای مختلف موضوعهای مختلف رو پوشش دادن. ارائه این کنفرانس به 2 زبان فارسی و انگلیسی خواهد بود. همینطور در خدمت یکی از استادان ارجمندمون در حوزه تاریخ مطالعات کرد و همینطور حوزه عرفان کردی در واقع خواهیم بود که به صورت برنامه‌ای ضبط شده ایشون قبول زحمت کردن و ما رو مستفیض خواهند کرد از مجموعه تحقیقاتی که داشتن و در همین مجموعه ما برای شما اونو ارائه می‌کنیم. امیدوارم که اولین گامی که در این حوزه تحت عنوان سمینار تمدن ایران اسلامی، هویت، مؤلفه و شکوه تاریخی ارائه خواهد شد بتونه فتح بابی باشه برای فصول بعدی که در این مقوله ها ما بتونیم کارهای ارزشمندتر و بسیطتری رو ارائه کنیم. انشاءالله که همگی سلامت باشید و با امید کارهای بعدی بهتر.
Well, thanking Dr. Malik Zadeh, I would also like to inform you that the abstracts of the papers have been published in 2 languages and are available to interested participants. So our first speaker was scheduled for today is Professor Rüdiger Lolka, but he unfortunately couldn't make it today because he got ill. So the first speaker I would kindly invite Dr. Reza Olami, Senior Lecturer of Political Philosophy, Cultural and Civilizational Studies, and the Scientific Secretary of the conference to present this.
Good evening. Good evening, and thank you very much for your participating and your assistance. Today I want to explore one of history's most sophisticated civilizations, one that emerged when Islamic thought encountered the ancient Iranian world. But to understand this encounter properly, we must first appreciate what Iran brought to it. Iran was not a blank slate awaiting Islam's arrival. It was an ancient civilization with 3,000 years of states building, philosophical thinking, and cultural refinement behind it. The question we need to ask is this: how did this deep-rooted Iranian civilization interact with Islamic principles to create something that was neither purely Persian nor purely Arab, but genuinely new? And what were the unique characteristics that defined these sentences? Let me be clear from the start. When Islamic arrived in Iran in the 7th century, it encountered a civilization of extraordinary depth and complexity, political and administrative genius. The Achaemenid Empire, founded by Cyrus the Great in the 6th century BCE, was the world's first true superpower, stretching from India to Egypt, from Central Asia to Libya. At this height, it governed roughly 44% of the world population. This wasn't maintained by force alone, but through sophisticated administrative systems. The Iranians invented the concept of the professional civil service. The Sasanian Empire had a bureaucratic structure with specialized departments: a Ministry of Finance, a Ministry of War, a Ministry of Religion, a postal and intelligence system that stretched across thousands of miles. They created the world's first network of roads with regular stations. The return paradise itself comes from the Persian word paradis, meaning the walled royal garden that demonstrated the king's ability to create order from chaos. When the early Islamic caliphates needed to govern their rapidly expanding empire, they adopted wholesale the Sasanian administrative model. The Abbasid bureaucracy was essentially the Sasanian system with Arabic labels. The very concept of organized government in medieval Islam came largely from Iran. But Iran's contribution went far deeper than administration. Ancient Iranian thought had developed complex philosophical framework long before Islam arrived. Zoroastrianism wasn't just a religion, It was a complete philosophical system addressing the problem of good and evil, free will and determinism, the nature of time and eternity, the concept of linear time moving toward an ultimate resolution, as opposed to cyclical time, was fundamentally Iranian and profoundly influenced later Jewish, Christian, and Islamic astrology. The late Sasanian period saw the development of what scholars call Khosravani wisdom, a synthesis of Greek philosophy, Iranian thought, and indigenous Iranian tradition. The famous Academy of Jundishapur or Gondishapur became a center where Greek texts were translated into Pahlavi and Sanskrit words were studied alongside Iranian traditions. When Islamic scholars later began translating Greek philosophy, they were often working with texts that had already been preserved and commented upon by Iranian scholars. Perhaps most importantly, Iran possessed something rare, a continuous literary and cultural tradition stretching back millennia. The Persian language carried within it layers of civilizational memory, epic traditions, wisdom literature, concepts of kingship and justice, aesthetic principles. When Ferdowsi composed the Shahnameh around 1010 CE, a work of 50,000 couplets completed over 30 years, he was deliberately preserving pre-Islamic Iranian cultural memory within an Islamic framework. This epic doesn't just tell stories, it transmits a complete worldview about justice, legitimacy, the relationship between power and wisdom, the tragedy of good intention leading to disaster. These are civilizational themes with roots going back thousands of years. The Persian language itself became the primary vehicle for Islamic culture across a vast region. From the 10th century onward, Persian was the language of administration from Anatolia to Bengal, the language of philosophy and science, the language of poetry and mysticism. More Islamic philosophy and mystical literature was eventually written in Persian than in Arabic. We must understand the sheer scale. At various points, Iranian civilization dominated or heavily influenced territory from the Mediterranean to the borders of China, from the Caucasus or Kafkas to the Indian Ocean, and so on. The Achaemenid Empire was the largest the world had yet seen. The Parthian Empire successfully resisted Roman expansion for nearly 5 centuries. The Sasanian Empire was Rome's only serious rival, a sophisticated civilization that the Romans both feared and admired. This wasn't just military control, it was cultural influence, administrative models, artistic styles, religious ideas spreading across the enormous geography. When Islam encountered Iran, it encountered a civilization with deep experience in governing multi-ethnic empire, synthesizing diverse cultural traditions and projecting influence across vast distance. Now, what happened when Islam met these ancient civilization? This is where the story become fascinating, because it was simple conquest or conversion. It was mutual transformation. The Islamic contribution came primarily through three intellectual traditions that found uniquely fertile ground in Iran. First, philosophy took on new life when Al-Farabi died 950 and Avicenna died 1037, engaged with Greek philosophy. They weren't just translating Aristotle, they were creating new philosophical systems that addressed questions Greek philosophy had never adequately answered or well enough answered. Avicenna proved for the existence of God based on the distinction between essence and existence was genuinely original. His comprehensive system attempting to reconcile Aristotelian logic with Islamic theology created a framework that dominated Islamic and European thought for centuries. His canon of medicine was translated into Latin and remained the standard medical textbook at European universities for 600 years. It went through 35 printed editions between 1500 and 1674. By the truly distinctive Iranian Islamic synthesis came with Sohrawardi, died 1191, and his philosophy of illumination. Sohrawardi explicitly attempted to revive ancient Iranian wisdom, what he called Khosravani wisdom, and synthesize it with Islamic philosophy and mysticism. His system of light metaphysics, where existence is understood as gradations of light and darkness, draw on ancient Zoroastrian concept while creating something philosophically original. This reached its culmination with Mullah Sadra, died 1614 in Safavid Isfahan. His transcendent philosophy attempt to synthesize pre-pathetic philosophy, illuminationist wisdom, Islamic theology, and Sufi mysticism into a single coherent system. His major work, The Four Journeys, runs to 9 volumes. This wasn't commentary, it was original, systematic metaphysic addressing fundamental questions about existence, essence, cohesion, and knowledge. Islamic mysticism found its most sophisticated expression in the Iranian context. Figures like Bayazid Bastami, Hallaj, and later the great Sufi order developed rigorous spiritual disciplines with their own epistemology. But it was a Persian literature that Islamic mysticism achieved its most powerful expression. Rumi's Masnavi, roughly 25,000 verses, about the length of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey combined, became the most widely studied mystical text in Persian. Over 300 manuscript commentaries were written on it over the centuries. It is not just poetry, it's a complete system of mystical psychology, ethics, and metaphysics presented through stories, parables, and allegories. Attar and other Hafiz Shirazi and other Sadi, other Iranian poets, and I don't have enough time to explain their activities about literature. And crucially, Persian became the primary language for these synthesis by the 10th to 11th centuries. Persian had emerged as the lingua franca of Islamic high culture from Anatolia to Bengal. The Ghaznavid, Seljuk, Khwarezmian, Ilkhanid, Timurid, Safavid, and Mughal codes all used Persian as their primary administrative and cultural language. This wasn't linguistic imperialism, it was cultural influence. Persian carried within it the concept, the aesthetic sensibilities, the political vocabulary developed over millennia of Iranian civilization. When a Mughal emperor in Delhi commissioned Persian poetry, when Ottoman intellectuals studied Persian philosophy, when Central Asian scholars wrote Persian treatises, they were participating in an Iranian Islamic cultural sphere. What made this Iranian Islamic synthesis distinctive? Let me identify 5 defining characteristics. First, epistemological synthesis that I talked about this, and I prefer to talk about other topics. Second, metaphysical aesthetics. Beauty wasn't decoration; it was a metaphysical principle. The universe itself was understood as a manifestation of divine beauty, and human artistic creation was a way of participating in and reflecting this cosmic beauty. This explains the extraordinary attention to beauty in everything from manuscript illumination to garden design to architectural proportions. The Sheikh Lutfullah Mosque in Isfahan, completed 1619, has 32 windows in this dome arranged to that light creates constantly changing geometric pattern throughout the day. This isn't just clever engineering. His theology to architecture lied as a manifestation of divine presence, geometry as a path to understanding cosmic order. And about intellectual pluralism, I should talk shortly. The civilization maintained remarkable intellectual diversity, competing philosophical schools. The Persians following Avicenna, the Illuminationist philosophical flowing Sohrawardi, the transcendent philosophers following Mulla Sadra, coexisted and debated. Different Sufi orders developed distinct practices and teachings. Various schools of theology argued over fundamental questions. This wasn't modern liberal tolerance, it was confidence rooted in civilizational depth. The Iranian tradition had always commendated diversity. Zoroastrians, Jews, Christians, various sects had coexisted for countries under Iranian empires. When Islam arrived, this tradition, Iranian pluralism, merged with Islam's own period of intellectual openness to create a space for extraordinary creativity. Unlike the Western tendency to separate philosophical thought from political power, the Iranian Islamic tradition insisted they must be integrated political and religion or wisdom. The idea ruler was the philosopher king, the just sultan who rules through wisdom, not just forces. About this subject, we can talk about Farabi theory and other philosophers, Iranian philosophers, who talk about integrated between politics and wisdom or philosophy. And Iranian civilization maintained a continuous sense of sacred geography. Certain places, Neyshabur, Isfahan, Shiraz, Tabriz, weren't just cities but center of learning, spirituality, and culture with centuries of accumulated significance. And I prefer to don't talk about the scope and influence of Iran, because in preference I talked about scope and influence of Iran. But this is very important. 44% of maybe population of the world focused on Iran Empire in the history. But the civilization supported extraordinary institutional infrastructure. The Nizamiye college founded by Nizamul Mulk in the 11th century created a network of education institutions across the empire. Major cities had dozens of libraries. Isfahan, in its golden age, had hundreds of caravansarays, dozens of colleges, enormous observatories, and astronomical schools. The Maraghe observatory, built by Nasiruddin Tusi in 1259, employed at least 10 astronomers from different regions and produced the most accurate astronomical tables of the medieval period. The Samarkand Observatory, built by Ulugh Beg in the 1420s, has a radius of 14 meters and produced measurements of unique accuracy. Intellectual honesty requires addressing why this civilization's creative period eventually ended, and I don't have enough time to talk about this. But for conclusion, let me summarize my speech in 5 notes. First, it demonstrated that a civilization could synthesize diverse traditions, Greek, Indian, Iranian, Arab, into something genuinely original. This wasn't mere mixing, but creative transformation. Second, it showed that multiple forms of knowledge could coexist productively. Rational philosophy, mystical insight, and religious revelation weren't competitors but complementary paths. Third, it created work of enduring value, philosophical system that still repay, study, poetry that still moves readers, horticulture that still inspire, all scientific achievements that advanced human knowledge. Fourth, it's proved that a civilization rooted in religious faith could at the same time treasure philosophical inquiry, scientific investigations, and artistic excellence without seeing these as contradictions. And fifth, the legacy isn't about claiming superiority. It's about understanding a distinctive approach to fundamental question. How do we know? How should we live? How should we live? How do we create beauty? How do we govern justly? How do we synthesize diverse tradition while maintaining coherent identity? These questions remain relevant. The Iranian Islamic civilization answered emphasizing synthesis over purity, integration over separation, beauty as truth, wisdom as essential to power, offer perspectives worth understanding whether or not we ultimately adopt them. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gholami, for your very inspiring speech. And now we are arriving to a special segment of today's program, the presentation of the first Beat Fragner Award. We had hoped to welcome Dr. Philipp Hammer-Burgstahl, the grandson of the great Iranologist Joseph von Hammer-Burgstahl, but due to an unexpected trip, he was unable to attend today's event. Next, I invite you to watch a short film containing the jury's statement and the introduction of the first award recipient.
Fragner Iranian Book Award. Bert Fragner founded in 2025. the first Bert Fragner Award for Books in Iranian Studies. The 18th of February 2026, 16 o'clock. Iranian's Wisdom House, Vienna.
The Bert Fragner Award is established in honor of the late Professor Bert Fragner, recognizing his outstanding contributions to Iranian studies. Professor Fragner was a pillar of modern Iranian studies in Austria, bringing classical Persian texts to the European scholarly community. Through his research, teaching, and mentorship, he strengthened the foundations of Iranian studies at the University of Vienna and the Austrian Academy of Sciences. His international activities and scholarly networks helped establish Austrian Iranian studies on the global stage. Today, his scientific and cultural legacy continues to inspire researchers through ongoing studies, translations, and specialized awards in Iranian studies.
Statement of the jury of the first Fragner Book Award, Winter 2026.
The jury of the first Fragner Book Award, established in honor of the late Professor Bert Fragner, proudly acknowledges and affirms the scholarly and cultural significance of the German translation of Tariq Vassaf by Sherfadin Abdallah Ibni Fazlallah Vassaf Hazar. This translation, reviewed and edited by Mac. Dr. M.A.S. Sybil Wenker, has made the transmission of Iran's classical heritage to the European academic community possible and enables researchers and interested readers to undertake precise and comparative analyses of Iranian history during the Mongol period through direct access to authentic primary sources.
Beyond providing access to the text itself, Wenker's work facilitates a deeper understanding of the subtleties and complexities of one of the most sensitive periods in Iran's history and reveals the long-standing and distinctive Iranian expertise in bureaucratic and administrative affairs. The indices, annotations, and scholarly standards accompanying the translation have transformed this work into a modern and authoritative academic resource in classical Iranian studies, as well as in the study of political and administrative history.
The jury further recalls that this achievement continues the path first opened in the 19th century by the late Joseph von Hammerbergstall, who was the first to recognize the importance of Tariq Vassaf and to provide a German translation for the European scholarly community. Today, the efforts of Mag Dr. M.A.S. Sybil Wenker introduce Hammerbergstall's legacy to a new generation of researchers and reinforce the standing of classical Iranian studies on the international stage.
Accordingly, the jury is honored to confer the first Bert Fragner Book Award in Iranian Studies upon Mag. Dr. M.A.S. Sybil Wenker, and extends to her its best wishes for continued success in her scholarly and personal life.
Mag Dr. M.A.S. Sybil Wenker is a distinguished Iranologist and a leading researcher at the Institute of Iranian Studies, Austrian Academy of Sciences. Her areas of expertise include the history of Iran during the Mongol and Ilkhanid periods, Persian historical texts, and the administrative and bureaucratic structures of pre-modern Iran. Through her critical editing, translation, and analysis of classical sources, most notably Tariq Vassaf, she has played a pivotal role in making Iran's historical heritage accessible to the European academic community. Her research focuses on meticulous textual scholarship, rigorous academic indexing, and the intersection of political history with cultural and administrative frameworks. She currently serves as Director of International Relations, Fellowships and Awards, and Research Funding at the Austrian Academy of Sciences, where she contributes actively to international scientific collaboration and the promotion of Iranian studies on the global stage.
Okay, I warmly congratulate Dr. Sybil Wenker on this great achievement. ask you, Dr. Wendker, Dr. Rolami, and Professor Bauer to come onto this stage. The statue and the award may be respectfully presented to Dr. Wendker.
Professor, please do. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And now I invite Dr. Sibyl Wendker to deliver her lecture on the history of Basaf, which narrates an important chapter of Iran's history. So, Dr. Wendker, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh yeah, a little bit. So. Okay. Close. Okay. Super. I do my best. Well, thank you so much. Speak now. Shall I speak without the microphone, or do you need this for recording? Yeah. Record. Huh? Okay. I try my best and speak up. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm deeply, deeply honored to receive this first Bert Fragner Prize, which actually connects my scholarly interests on Hammer-Purgstall and Basaf, as we will hear a little bit later, and to Bert Fragner himself and the Institute of Iranian Studies at the Austrian Academy of Sciences. This work has accompanied me now for roughly 20 years of my work, not exclusively, I have to say, thank God. And this project is very much connected to my life. But it builds on the work and activities of many other peoples I do not want to forget, and interest included in these four, but one volume is still to be published. Yeah? Soon 5 volumes. First Bert Fragner actually, who invited me, I believe 2006, to start this project, to edit the translation of Basaf of Josef von Hammer-Purgstall. Let me please 2 words about the work of Hammer-Purgstall in this context. Hammer-Purgstall, as you know, perhaps, was trained diplomat, translator and interpreter in the so-called, well, it was not Foreign Office, but it's meant to be Foreign Office, and he was sent to Istanbul, where he bought excessively Islamic and Oriental manuscripts. By accident, perhaps, he bought a very valuable manuscript of the Tarikh-e-Wasaf, dated from 1462 Christian era, which is quite early for the Wasaf manuscripts. Wasaf is left to us in many, many manuscripts, I believe in 160 or even more, yeah, if we read the catalogs more thoroughly and then we discover more. But this, so to say, this manuscript Hammer-Purgstall bought in Istanbul was a lucky pick, because it contained the full text, book 1 to 5, and he took it to Vienna and started to translate it because he realized the importance of the work. And at the end of his life, he managed, as the president of the Academy of Sciences, he managed to publish only the first volume of the Tarikh-e-Wasaf, and the other 4 volumes, yeah, of his handwritten manuscript of the translation were located in the archive of the Austrian Academy of Sciences, where they slept for another 100 years. And the former archivist of the Austrian Academy of Sciences, Klaus Hundsam, in connection with a very famous Iranologist, Karlian, yeah, typed the manuscript and tried to publish it. Yeah? And Bert Fragner, when he became director of the Institute of Iranian Studies in Vienna in 2003, of course, instantly realized how important this manuscript was and asked me to do the editing of this typed manuscript and doing indexes and annotations to it and compiling it, of course, also with the manuscript Hammer Puchtal bought in Istanbul, so to receive an index for that. And so actually it has been a really long project if we think of Hammer Puchtal's first efforts to translate this very important work of Iranian historiography. And I'm about to finish, I'm saying this for the last 4 years, that I'm about to finish it, but I promise I will. To finish the 5th volume for publication in this or next year. This will be my goal. Yeah? And then, in the end, we will have a translation, and thank you for this embarrassing, beautiful film you made, yeah? But indeed, you will have the one and only translation of the text in a, so to say, European language, and this translation will help any reader who is interested in this important period of Iranian history to find your way to this complex and, I have to say, quite difficult work of Vassaf. I have to thank, of all people, of course, to the late Bert Fragner for the trust he put in me, for giving me the support at the Institute of Iranian Studies, but also I want to thank his successor in this office of Director of the Institute, Florian Schwarz, for continuing this support. I'm tremendously grateful for you in the Beit al-Hikmah here in the Schottenfeldgasse, for namely Professor Reza Gholami, for this prize and acknowledging our work, which we can gladly say that it is a really endeavor of Austrian Iranian united scholarship. I'm fully aware, I have to say, of my privilege in conducting this research in the safety of an employment in the Academy of Sciences. As you know from the last year's Shabbat Bert Fragner, you know that Bert Fragner was a very proud member of the non-privileged working class. He grew up quite poor, and he was a child of the working class district in Hernals, yeah, and the 17th district of Vienna, and I'm confident that he would appreciate if I may share what I have achieved with people who are in more need than I have the bitter luck to be in. Please let me close this thank you. I start with my lecture, and of course with a deep hope, yes, that Iranian and Austrian scholarship will continue to cooperate in the very unending story of the Tarikh Vassaf. But now, I was asked, and I'm very happy to do so, to give, and again I'm very honored to be invited in the opening session of your important conference on the Iranian identity in its very many facets. And I was kindly invited to talk about the Tarikh Vassaf itself, and as you will see, I'm the one who profited the most from the translation of Hammer Puchtal, because my Persian, unfortunately, is not enough to understand the work in Persian or Arabic language alone. So also I had the help of Hammer Puchtal at my hand to understand it. The historical work of Vassaf, of the Persian historian Vassaf, with the full name Sharafuddin ibn Fazlullah Shirazi, is rightly regarded as a major work of Persian historiography of the Ilkhanid period, which is in general, one has to say, rich in important historical works. Today's and tomorrow's conference, deals with the different facets of Iranian civilization and its preoccupation with it. And we heard in the lecture of Professor Rolamier about the richness of these facets. The history that Vassav has left us is an example how diverse the building blocks of Iranian civilization are. It offers some ambiguities we have to take into consideration. Vassav's text clearly represents a high point in medieval Persian literature, but at the same time, its strong Arabisms pose a considerable challenge to the understanding of this historical work. Second, Vassav's text is a naturally laudatory account of the Mongol history commissioned by the Mongol rulers. On the other hand, it is also a vivid example of how the Mongol period provided an opportunity to incorporate typical Persian context into literature and historiography. In our example, through the extensive inclusion of references of Persian mythology and quotations from the Shahnameh. Vassav, as you most probably know, is the honorary name of Sharafuddin, and it means, as you know quite well, panegyrist or poeta laureatus. The short name of his this is his name is also giving the name of the impressive historical work. For that reason, it is normally referred to as Tarikh Vassav, the history of Vassav. Vassav worked in the financial administration in Fars, in the south of Iran, and was the author of the historiographical work in 5 parts, with the Arabic title Tajziyat al-Amsar wal Tazjiyat al-A'sar, in English translation, the allocation of cities and the propulsion of epochs. You note that the important Persian work has a very complicated Arabic title. We do not know very much about Vassav in his life, except of what he tells us in his chronicle. But he must have had some reputation as a poet at his time. Through the intervention by the famous historian of the Jami' al-Tawarikh and Wazir at the Ilkhanid court, the famous Fazlullah Rashiduddin Hamadani, Vassav was ordered to write his historical work on the Ilkhans. Very interesting. The Mongol rulers commissioned a Persian administrator to write their history. It tells you a lot about identity shaping in a country of uproar. To write his historical work on the Ilkhans and received a pension for that. The first volume he presented to Razan in 1303, the following 3 volumes to Al-Jaytu. The 5th and last volume, Vassav, finished in the reign of Abu Sa'id. The Tarikh of Vassav covers a period of Mongol rule in Iran until 728, Islamic era, and it is actually quite a short period of time he is covering. But this is enriched, and the manuscript Ramapuchta used had about 800, I believe, pages, so it's quite a voluminous work. Is enriched with the reports on the history of various Iranian provinces and neighboring countries and dynasties. It is probably inappropriate to call Vassav's work a world history like the Jami' al-Tawarikh, but it deserves the remark that it incorporated interesting side views on the history of India, Egypt, and the like, and even some fantastic stories about the island of Pinch, for example, where there are so many mice, and when a captain of a ship brings the cat, he is rewarded with tons of gold because of this. The work was, as Vassaf himself informed us, intended as a sequel of the Tarikh Jahan Jubusha by Juwaini, and he tried, as he wrote in it, to copy, or what to say, the elaborated style of Juwaini. Since Vassaf belonged to the higher administrative elite of the Ilkhanids, he could offer a direct insight into the events on the time he lived in, especially on the province of Fars, where he preferred to live. Actually, he reports of that when he was commissioned to write the history, he should live in Tabriz, and he said, no, he will not bear that. He wants to go back to Shiraz. Lost my line, sorry. The important thing with Vassaf is, beside of the interesting historical contents, its difficulty in the language. Everybody agrees that Vassaf offers a very difficult, stylized version which does it not make easy for anybody to follow the content. In Iran, Malik Shu'ara Bahar's famous university textbook, Sabshenasi, formed, as you know, the first philological and stylistically analysis of Persian chronicles. His work traces grammatical and literary transformation in Iranian prose. This was a fairly new approach concerning cultural history in Iran, but also Western-oriented. I always say Western, you mean what I mean. You mean European language Orientalists did not pay any attention to the question of a whatsoever identity, Iranian identity in its literary forms. Bahar's work consists of 3 volumes, and the third one covers the period from the Mongol invasion on till, so to say, the Qajar times. Already Bahar states the richness of the historiographical production in the Ilkhanid Empire, which is completely true not only for Iran, but surprisingly also for the Mamluk state in the neighboring Egypt. It's a very interesting phenomenon that you have a surprising richness of scholarly work in a whole, but especially in historiography in this time, in this region. So in general, the richness of historical work is indeed astonishing. Bahar included Vassaf in the 5 prominent historical works of the time. In his, so to say, he meant Juwaini, Rashiduddin, Vassaf, Mustafi, and Baidar. His analysis famously identified the 2 distinct varieties of style, the Nasr Fani, so to say, formal or artificial prose, and the other, the Nasr Sadeh, a simpler prose, and stated that both forms of style could be found in any historiographical work. Perhaps influenced by that, Abdul Muhammad Ayati tried to give the public a simplified version of the Tarikh al-Vassaf by stripping the text of all its poetry and the rhetorical adornment, the proposed Nasr Fani, and leave the torso of the remaining Nasr Sadeh, which he also changed into Persian words, as the real matter and center of information. Abdul Muhammad Ayati was by no means an unexperienced scholar in the field of historiography. He had, for example, translated the multi-volume Kitab al-Ibar by Ibn Khaldun into the Persian language. But the book, the Tahrir al-Vassaf, didn't do so well, because it remains, of course, obvious then if you strip away all the poetry, which belongs deeply to the work, it is not doing the Tarikh al-Vassaf its proper justice, although I think it still enjoys reprints in Iran, and it still offers a seemingly easier approach to Vassaf's challenging text. I see it less quoted in these days, I have to say, but this is of course also due to the very nice editions of the Wassaf we have at hands at the moment. Dealing with Baha'u'llah's classification of Fani and Sadeh in Persian literature, Anna Polyakova stated in her meaningful article, Development of a Literary Canon in Medieval Chronicle, I quote, "The essential shortcoming of such a classification is Baha'u'llah's exclusion of any analysis of figures of speech and his failure to explain the ways such devices are applied in order to express the concept of the historiographer himself. The underlying concept of the historiographer is often neglected or downplayed even. In the case of Wassaf, it is indeed helpful to listen to him. Wassaf's work could be called a literary work with historical content, or a historiographical work with a literary form. Wassaf himself would most possibly not have wanted to decide for either option. He meant it to be both. Fortunately, we are informed about his intentions by himself at the beginning of the second volume. At the beginning of the second volume, he inserts a passage about his intention in writing the book of history. The purpose of the blackening of these white sheets is not alone the reporting of the events and the news and the connections of the stories and the histories, but it is rather focused on a collection of scholarly arts, a collection of rhetorical examples, a vademecum of the manners of good style, and a canon of the models of eloquence, and that the events that are the subject of history will show in this rhetorical ornament. The object of this passage was the unification of form and function. There is no evidence that Wassaf favored the book either to be a literary or a historical one. We will come to that later, but virtuosity alone was not Wassaf's intention. The virtuosity did, quite in contrast, not hinder him to reflect on history and society. After Kayhatu's death in 1295, he enclosed a lengthy passage about the quality of the just ruler. We just heard about the importance of the treatises on the just ruler in Iranian literature and philosophy. Here it is especially interesting because Wassaf is picturing the reign of Kayhatu as a total disaster for Iran, with the invention of the paper money, disastrous invention of paper money instead of the gold currency, which did ruin the economy and the country for several years. And Wassaf is picturing Kayhatu himself as an erratic drunkard, sorry to say so. In the pursuit of his aim to picture the history of Iran since the Mongol invasion, Wassaf shaped his narrative in almost continuous sage, intermingled with verses from the Quran and verses from his own or others' poetry, sometimes incorporated totally into the narrative. Normally this was done to stress the point Wassaf was to make. Josef von Hammer-Purgstall, for some reason, more than others, understood this intention of Wassaf perfectly well. Educated in Arabic, Persian and Ottoman Turkish, in the diplomatic training of the Habsburg Empire in the end of the 18th century, Hammer developed a deep devotion for Persian literature, which he showed very soon in the first complete translation of the Divan al-Hafez into German. In his great literary history of the Persian literature, in fact the first comprehensive one in a European language, the 1818 published Geschichte der schönen Redekünste Persiens, the history of the beautiful figures of speech of Persia, he declares Wassaf to be, together with Hafez, the most important poets of the Zeitalter der lyrischen Dichtkunst, the age of the lyrical poetry. Vassaf is showing up in so many publications by Hammer, if you look for the index of all those works, that we really can say that this Persian text formed a constant in his scholarly life. Hammer was convinced that poetry had the ability to depict culture in its totality. So Vassaf, who wrote cultural history with literary tools, impressed Hammer deeply. Only the ongoing 19th century, which tended to divide more sharply between the disciplines, could not understand this intention anymore. The world of scholarship, now mainly situated in the universities, did not want to accept a unity between poetical form and scholarly content. Hammer Burgstall, as I have said before, could switch easily between these two poles. This is clearly shown in the preface to the first volume of the history of Vassaf, the Geschichte Vassafs, where Hammer compares him either with the poet Hariri and either with the historian Ibn Khaldun, and this on purpose and not by accident. Vassaf's stylistic choices were largely rejected by 20th century readers, one has to deplore. His writing was dismissed as unbearably pompous, and the historical content was either devalued or, if not, considered outrageous due to its difficult presentation. Bert Fragner once explained this, a little bit smiling, of course, yeah? Explained once this harsh opposition of the so-called Western Orientalists with their frustration, not being able to understand the difficult language of the Tarikh al-Vassaf. There is some point in that, I believe. This attitude persists actually until today a little bit, as reflected in entries in current reference books and encyclopedias. And this attitude has leads also, it is a little bit wrong and it is sometimes also annoying, but it can lead you also to complete misunderstanding of the Vassaf's text, and I want to give you one example for that. Almost folkloristic is the story that when Vassaf recited verses from his work to Sultan Ol-Jeytu, the latter did not understand him. This story is transported by Brown already in his literary history of the Persians, as evidence that Vassaf was already in his time considered completely incomprehensible. On closer inspection, if you look at the text itself, however, the situation appears quite different. Vassaf reports, and also Brown refers to this, that he presented his work to Ol-Jeytu, who asked the Vizier Rashiduddin, who accompanied him, about the meaning of what had been said, to which Rashiduddin replied, "In my opinion, this cleverly composed scene is by no means intended to portray the recipient of the eulogistic chronicle, Ol-Jeytu, as an uneducated man who cannot understand poetry, or the other way around, Vassaf as a poet whom nobody is able to understand." Vassaf found a way to present the addressee of his chronicle in a style familiar from Greek philosophy, using the dialogue to enliven the scene. The text does not indicate that Ol-Jeytu could not understand Vassaf's word. He asked several times, and this repetition, of course, is also a stylistic device, what does he, meaning Vassaf, mean by that? This provides an opportunity to paraphrase the wishes for the ruler's well-being, expressed in artful poetry, through the mouth of the respected Vizier Rashiduddin, again, but this time in the guise of a philosophical existential discourse. In doing so, Vassav does not only showcase his own ability to switch effortlessly between poetry, between rhetorical genres, but also presents, of course, the praised ruler as a worthy recipient of praise, poetry, and philosophy. So things can really go wrong when you have the wrong, so to say, perception. It is far from my intention, although, to amuse myself with assumptions that no longer stand up for scrutiny. It shows that the reception of any text is a constant state of flux, and in 50 years we'll read it again differently, yeah? And will remain so. We have to thank Hammer Potsdam for the fact that the text by the panegyrist Vassav, which is in many respects not been sufficiently appreciated, that it can be used and interpreted by those who are not experts in Persian and Arabic. And I believe that there is still much to be explored there. At the end of my presentation, I want to mention some highlights of Iranian scholarships on Vassav, which has been developed in the last years, very fortunately. Fortunately, Iranian scholarship has been working very actively on Vassav in the last years. Many years, the famous mid-19th century Bombay edition by Mahdi Mohammad Esfahani Kazemi proved to be the only printed version of the full text. And the text has been reprinted for several times. The Bombay text was accomplished by a couple of other lithographies of the late 19th centuries, but they did not cover the whole text, but only single volumes. 2009, the autograph, so we are in a very, very lucky position to have an autograph of Vassav, of the fourth volume only, unfortunately, covering mainly the history of Razan, was published in facsimile by the late Iraj Afshar and Mahmoud Umid Salam. In the same year, an edition of that manuscript was published by Ali Reza Hajiyan Nejad, and both editions were supplemented by substantial introductions and indexes. I can imagine that these editions really set off a series of studies on Vassav in Iran, and if you browse the internet, yeah, you can find a lot of articles in scholarly journals occupied with the studies of certain aspects of Vassav's work. Starting with a very interesting book by Mahbouba Sharafi on the life, work, and historical philosophy of Vassav. This was published, I forgot it now, but it was, I believe, 2009 something. And since 2022, we have a full edition of the text in the 6-volume edition, plus commentary and indexes, a fantastic work by Ahmed al-Khatami. I hope that more interesting studies on Vassav will enhance our knowledge on a very educated, thoughtful author whose history can still teach us about life and history in turbulent times. Thank you so much.
Many thanks to Dr. Wendke for this
Thank you so much.
extraordinary insight to modern Iranian culture and history. At this at this moment, we will do a little shift in our program as Dr. Rolami has asked me to present my dissertation, which takes you a little bit, I won't say off topic, but a little bit another direction. So I just switch my role from moderator to a speaker, so it will take a few seconds. Okay. Yeah, after such an excellent presentation from Dr. Wendke, I think you have very much laid the level very high. So I'm having a real hard time now. I'm going to talk about institutional perspective on insurance in the Middle East. The case of Iran, and I think in this environment of Iranists, that sophisticated sounding title needs a little bit an explanation. Let me tell a very short anecdote first. When I did my my research on this and was 12 months in Iran, and then I returned to Vienna, and then I had I met an old friend on the street by occasion, and he was asking me what I was doing in the last year, and I told him I was in Iran doing research, and he was like looking at me and asking, research in Iran on what, on archaeology, and basically this very much tells I think the common perception of Iranian studies in Austria and Europe in general. It is somehow connected to something ancient, to something old, whereas those of you who have been in Tehran may have noticed that this is it's basically a modern city with highways and cafes and bars and people have cars and yeah, they basically they use cashless payment, because we heard that story about banknotes, that it created a kind of upheaval in the modern history of Iran. But if you go now to Iran, you barely will see anyone who uses cash, because everyone is basically using cards. It would be very interesting how our hero in the story would have seen this very recent development. But anyway, and I chose my topic of interest is how Middle Eastern societies, and in particular Iran, react to modernity, because and it is very hard kind of to grasp, because someone may ask, okay, what is modernity? When did it kick in? When did it began in the Middle East? And I was going a little bit a different path here. I was searching for a proxy, like a little part of the whole reality on whose basis you can make conclusions to the to the whole. So in Latin they say a pars pro toto, like a little section of the whole, which enables us to make further conclusions how this very complicated reality may look like. And I chose insurance. Why insurance? Because I assume every one of you has a kind of insurance, be it health insurance or car insurance, or I don't know, insurance against fire, insurance on accident, health insurance, and the basic notion behind is that we are living in in an era of risks. So basically, there are a lot of risks that are out there in this modern world. If I'm driving a car, it can happen any time that someone just crashes me from the back, or if I go down the stairs right here, it can basically happen that I slip and then that I'm seriously injured. It can happen that while I'm here and doing my speech, there will be a phone call from the fire brigade that my own flat is burning. So there are a lot of risks, and insurance is a very important tool that mitigates risk. There is a Viennese insurance company. If you are from Vienna, then you may know it. It's a very old advertisement. It's a very old advertisement, and it said, "Ihre Sorgen möchten wir haben." Like, yeah, we want to have your concerns, and this very much captures the essence of insurance. What insurance does, basically, that I can have a life in security, whereas I pay a monthly, I don't know, a monthly amount of money, and in return, if something happens, then the insurance company will compensate my loss. This is the basic principle, and this is also a modern principle, because what used to, because in pre-modern times, I won't go into the discussion about modern is. Maybe Ms. Wentka won't agree with me, but in pre-modern time it was kind of different, because humanity used to transfer these risks to kind of a transcendental being, to a higher deity. People used to pray, for example, that a pandemic like the plague in the Middle Ages doesn't happen again, and they erected large statues and churches and here in Europe, and in modern time, if you remember the COVID pandemic, this kind of risk management happened in an entirely different way, and so we can say that insurance basically is a kind of proxy of modernity, because it developed hand in hand. It appeared in the 14th century in northern Italy, and this is why many of the key vocabulary, also in German, which you use in the insurance business, like risk, polizza, or casco, is of Italian origin. And in my dissertation, I said, okay, I will we'll have a look at how this institution developed in a non-European context. So we see an institution here which emerged in Europe, and then from Europe partly as also as a consequence of colonialism and coercion, of course, it spread to other parts of the world, and this is this is what I researched in my dissertation. It is very, very hard to, because insurance has a very broad dimension. There is insurance law. There is also an economic discipline called insurance economy, where basically all the yearly or monthly amounts that one has to pay are calculated. And I chose here an institutional approach. I think I won't go very much into it, but I wanted to capture here an approach which combines both law, like written law, but also unwritten, like written state law, but also written informal law, which is like the Sharia. And I will come to that a little bit later during my in my presentation. And what I wanted to explore is how the economic reality in those countries, and in particular in Iran, looks like. If you do research on insurance and the Islamic world, you get a lot of entries. Which this is basically the first. This is a screenshot from Google, which I took, and these are the first entries. Like is insurance halal or haram? So this is a very important aspect of insurance in the Middle East and in the Islamic world, that scholars, religious scholars, in very many parts of the Islamic world, maybe Iran as an exception, were against this institution on the grounds that if you pay money, what is the guarantee that you get that money back? And it can also happen that I conclude a car insurance and I don't have an accident in the next, I don't know, 20, 30 years. Or if I conclude a life insurance and I simply don't die until I'm 90 or 100. So basically no one gets that money back, and the main concern was that insurance is similar to gambling, because gambling as an institution was known when the main corpuses of Islamic law were made, but of course, as insurance as a new institution, it wasn't there. So the Islamic scholars searched for a kind of analogy, and for many, in particular in the Sunni world, it is still a large discourse whether Muslims are eligible are allowed, so to say, to conclude insurance or not. And also here in Austria, in Muslim community, this discourse goes on and on. And also, if you do, these are all this is also a screenshot. I did a research on in the Austrian library system about insurance and the Islamic world, and the first hits were Islamic insurance products, Takaful Islamic insurance, and Islamic banking. So this discourse, what I wanted to show is the discourse very much revolves around how insurance in the Islamic world should be, but not how insurance as a business, as an institution in the Islamic world is. And so I looked at the Iranian case, which I found is extraordinarily interesting because it's a very old civilization. It has 3,000 years of history, and how this civilization coped with insurance in the first place, and and for me, it was mind-boggling. So these are basically the cornerstones of institutional insurance in Iran. So we have 1904. So we remember that the first insurance companies in Europe emerged in the 13th century. In Iran, it was 1905. When the first insurance contract on Iranian soil was concluded. And the background is a very interesting one. So this was the time when, this was the years before World War I, and Iran was it was the late Qajar era when Iran was in the vice of the two great powers, Great Britain and Russia, and they divided Iran to influence zones. So, Great Britain basically got the southern part, and the Russians occupied the northern parts, and very many. And this is also, I think, a quite under-researched dimension of modern Iranian history, that many modern institutions came from Russia. So the Russian Empire introduced those institutions, also many banks, and also the first insurance companies which appeared on Iranian soil, namely the Nadezhda, which used to be, it means hope in Russian, and it used to be a quite big insurance company back then in the Russian Empire. And the other one was the Kafkaz-i Mercury. It was also a big insurance company in back in the Russian Empire, and those were the first two insurers that operated on today's in today's Iranian territory. And their reception, because they were something that generally emerged from the Iranian society itself, but were very much brought into connection with a foreign power. Iranian, the Iranians saw Russians with skepticism. They were basically a colonial power. They occupied a part of large parts of Iran, and also exploited the country economically. And the Iranians, or many Iranians, saw these companies with large skepticism. And after the Russians, you know the story, the Russian Empire was defeated, but then new companies came, and I have here some quotes from early discussions in the Iranian parliament, which show the mood, so to say, how Iranian decision makers back at the time considered insurance. I quote: "These insurance companies generate high revenues, and the immense sums they squeeze out of people benefit the states from which these companies originate. But when damage occurs, then the company finds 1,000 reasons why it is not responsible. The phenomena that exist in Europe do not exist in our country. Things that cause fires in Europe, such as gas and electricity, we do not have. Consequently, this money that the insurance companies take from people is pointless and useless." End of quote. And here is another one, a member of parliament delivers a speech, beginning of quote: "Of course, the state is of the opinion that insurance companies only bring harm because they take the money and issue people a document whose validity they do not understand. From a financial, economic and legal perspective, this is harmful to our country. In this matter, the drafting of insurance contracts, there should be complete clarity, but the documents that the representatives of the insurance companies issue to people are printed in foreign languages. Unfortunately, most of people neither understand the insurance contracts nor read them, nor have them translated. It has happened more than once that in case of a dispute, the jurisdiction of this or that foreign state was cited. This is advantage for the insurance company, but harmful for the insured. For an Iranian, there is no possibility at all to assert claims before a court of a foreign country. So, and this also made Iranian decision makers to intervene, to directly intervene into the market, and this is where the state insurer Bima Iran, which means insurance Iran, came into existence. So it was founded in 1935 as part of Reza Pahlavi's state building project, and 2 years later the first insurance law was enacted. And here I have also a quote from Dr. Agayan, who used to be the first CEO of the Bima Iran, about the problems which this company had to face. So I quote: "A few days later, the company began operations with 10 employees. The first clients were state institutions. Nevertheless, several things troubled me. First, there was no insurance law. In the legal disputes related to insurance, in which I was involved as a lawyer, I experienced that our courts did not understand insurance transactions, some of which concerned very ordinary foreign trade transactions. This circumstance caused me an enormous amount of effort. The second thing that troubled me was the presence of foreign companies whose number amounted to around 13 to 15. They were very displeased about the establishment of the company Bima Iran. They may have joined forces to lower the rates of insurance premium in order to destroy us within a year or two, or even sooner. And once they had achieved their goal, to raise their rates again." So, Dr. Agayan had a very hard time to keep the Iranian insurance company on the market, but ultimately he succeeded because the company still exists today and is still one of Iran's biggest insurance company. And the law that was enacted, at the Insurance Act of 1937, is still in force today, despite the upheavals and decades that the Iranian society had to face in the next 50 or 60 years. So this is something that endured. But how did the, last but not least, we'll look at how did the insurance industry cope? So we've covered now the legal background, and now how did it economically look like? So here we see the development of the Iranian insurance industry. It's a figure called insurance density. Basically, how the way it's calculated, it adds the premiums of all insurance companies on a market and divides it by the country's GDP. And well, we see that during the Pahlavi era, the insurance penetration more or less stagnated. Then there was a continuous rise after the end of, here you see the, I try to grab here a laser pointer, but I don't know, I think they somehow Yeah, here. So this is the Islamic Revolution, and here we see the end of the Iraq War, and since then, basically the insurance business also permeated the Iranian sort of fabric. So basically, if you go to Iran, everyone has an insurance contract, and it's and while earlier it was only something for the elites or big export companies, now it has become part of Iranian social life. So with this, thank you very much for your attention, and I don't know whether we have questions or to discuss. I really hope that that I could bring you something closer, which I don't know, you may think that is not directly related to Iranian studies, but nonetheless, yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much. So now I will switch to my other self, from a speaker to moderator. Actually, it would be my task to more discipline myself to stay more in the time slot, but obviously didn't succeed that much. Now let us watch together a clip of traditional Iranian music. This piece is based on one of the masterpieces of Rumi, performed through a combination of Iranian instruments and melodies. And I was also asked to read out a poem of Rumi, and I have to unfortunately expose my miserable Persian here. So I'm confident that that there are a lot of people whose Persian is better, but I will try my best. So yeah. ای عاشقان ای عاشقان پیمانه را گم کردم، در کنج ویران ماندم، خمخانه را گم کردم، هم در پی بالایان هم من آسیر خاکیام، هم در پی هم خانه هم خانه را گم کردم. us with the text of his speech, and I would like to invite Mr. Michael Ryan, a student of Iranian studies at the University of Bamberg, Germany, to read Professor Rastegar's speech for us. And with this, we wish Dr. Rastegar a speedy recovery.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank Professor Dr. Golami for inviting me to this conference. Also, Mr. Jawaher. It's an honor to be here tonight and to read on behalf of Dr. Rastegar his article with the English title, The Societal Position and Role of Women in Ferdowsi Shahnameh. But the article is in German, so I hope that's not an issue to read in German. Die gesellschaftliche Stellung und Rolle der Frauen in Ferdowsi Shahnameh. Dr. Nusratullah Rastegar, ehemaliges Mitglied des Lehrkörpers der Universität Wien und emeritiertes Mitglied des Österreichischen Instituts für Iranistik. Einleitung. Sehr geehrte Vorsitzende, verehrte Professorinnen und Professoren, meine Damen und Herren, zunächst möchte ich es für angemessen halten, Dr. Golami und Herr Jawaher für ihre Bemühungen bei der Organisation dieser Konferenz zu danken. Heute möchte ich über ein Thema sprechen, das auf den ersten Blick einfach erscheinen mag, aber bei näherer Betrachtung faszinierende Komplexitäten offenbart. Die gesellschaftliche Stellung und Rolle der Frauen in Ferdowsi Shahnameh. Um dieses Thema zu verstehen, müssen wir zunächst die Gesamtstruktur der Shahnameh begreifen. Der Shahnameh ist nicht nur ein nationales Epos, sondern eine evolutionäre Erzählung der Menschheitsgeschichte. Ferdowsi beschreibt in der Einleitung des Shahnameh den Evolutionsprozess des Seins von der Erschaffung der Welt bis zur Entstehung des Menschen. Vom Nichtsein zum Sein, von den 4 Elementen zu Lebewesen und von Lebewesen zum Menschen. Diese evolutionäre Perspektive setzt sich in den narrativen Texten fort. Wir erleben das Wachstum menschlicher Gesellschaften von der Steinzeit und dem Höhlenleben zu ländlichen Zivilisationen, dann zu städtischen Gesellschaften und schließlich zu internationalen Gemeinschaften. Diese evolutionäre Sichtweise, die Ferdowsi etwa 850 Jahre vor Darwin präsentierte, bildet den Hauptrahmen unserer heutigen Diskussion. Auf dieser Grundlage können wir die 50 narrativen Bücher des Shahnameh in 3 Abschnitte unterteilen. 1. Der mythologische Abschnitt, Bücher 1 bis 13. 2. Der haupthistorische Abschnitt, Bücher 14 bis 19. Und 3. Der historische Abschnitt, Bücher 20 bis 50. Der Eintritt der Frauen auf die Bühne der Geschichte. Nun stellt sich unsere zentrale Frage: Welche Stellung haben Frauen in dieser evolutionären Erzählung? Im mythologischen Abschnitt, in einer patriarchalischen Gesellschaft, treten Frauen zunächst allmählich und als namenlose Individuen ohne Namen in Erscheinung. Von der Mutter Kayumars, den Müttern Husham und Tahmures und sogar den Ehefrauen Jamshids wird nicht namentlich berichtet. Doch ab dem 5. Buch treten Frauen mit Namen auf die Bühne. Interessanterweise sind die ersten Frauen, die namentlich in die Erzählung eintreten, Shahnaz und Arnavaz, 2 Schwestern Jamshids, jedoch nicht als Heldinnen, sondern als Opfer. Nach Jamshids Sturz werden sie von Sahar gefangen genommen und vergewaltigt. Dies ist ein bitterer, aber realistischer Beginn. 8 Typen sozialer Frauenrollen. Im Verlauf meiner Forschungen, deren Ergebnisse ich im Buch Namensverzeichnis der persischen Epen zusammengestellt habe, konnte ich 8 Typen sozialer Rollen von Frauen im Shahnameh identifizieren. Gestatten Sie mir, jeden kurz zu erläutern. 1. Die Frau als Kriegsbeute und Opfer. Wie bereits erwähnt, sind Shahnaz und Arnavaz prominente Beispiele dieser Gruppe. Ferdowsi schildert die Situation dieser beiden Prinzessinnen mit bemerkenswerter Offenheit. Doch der wichtige Punkt ist, diese Frauen bewahren ihre menschliche Würde. Feridun befreit die beiden Damen nach seinem Sieg über Sahar und heiratet sie selbst. Ferdowsi verwendet für sie Attribute wie rein, keusch und unschuldig. Dies zeigt, dass ihre Opferrolle sie nicht der gesellschaftlichen Achtung beraubt. Weitere Beispiele sind die Mutter Siarosh, die vor einer Zwangsheirat flieht, Omai und Beh Auferi, die von Al-Jas befangen werden, oder Sklavinnen, die auf Sklavenmärkten gekauft und verkauft werden. 2. Die Frau als gleichwertige Ehefrau und Geliebte. Vielleicht die wichtigste Kategorie sind Ehefrauen und Geliebte, die als ebenbürtig zu ihren Männern gelten. Ferdowsi porträtiert 2 Arten von Ehen. Die erste, die vernünftige Ehe. Ein herausragendes Beispiel ist die Geschichte von Feriduns 3 Söhnen. Feridun bittet seine Berater in der ganzen Welt 3 würdige Bräute zu finden. Was sind die Kriterien? Ebenbürtige Herkunft und Abstammung, Bildung und gute Erziehung, Schönheit und Reinheit und sehr wichtig, die Zustimmung der Braut selbst. Tahmine, die Tochter des Königs von Samengan, ist die erste Frau, die selbst um Rostam wirbt. Sie erklärt stolz, sie habe Nachforschungen über Rostam angestellt und sei zu dem Schluss gekommen, dass er der einzig würdige Mann sei. Dies zeigt Unabhängigkeit und bewusste Wahl. Die zweite Art, die Liebesheirat. Natürlich weiß Ferdowsi, dass Liebe nicht immer mit Vernunft einhergeht. Liebesheiraten, wie die von Saar und Rudabeh, sind oft problematisch, bilden aber die schönsten Geschichten der Shahnameh. 3. Die Frau als Mutter. 2 ideale Beispiele: Pharaonak, die Mutter Feriduns, und Farangis, die Mutter Kehosros. Beide ziehen nach dem Tod ihrer Ehemänner ihre Kinder allein unter gefährlichen Bedingungen groß und übergeben sie Hirten, um sie vor Feinden zu schützen. Diese beiden Frauen bringen der Gesellschaft 2 große Könige Irans, Könige, die nie einen Vater hatten. 4. Die Frau als Politikerin und Diplomatin. Sindocht, Rudabehs Mutter, ist die erste große Diplomatin der Shahnameh. Als ihr Ehemann Mehrab nicht die Zustimmung Sams zur Heirat von Saar und Rudabeh erlangen kann, überzeugt Sindocht mit Finesse und politischer Klugheit nicht nur Sam, sondern sogar Manouchehr, den König Irans. Humayre regiert ebenfalls als Königin Irans mit Gerechtigkeit und sogar besser als Bahman, der vorherige König. 5. Die Frau als Kriegsheldin. Ghurra Farid ist ein herausragendes Beispiel. Sie kämpft in Männerkleidung gegen Sohra und zeigt nicht nur ihre militärische Stärke, sondern schlägt auch diplomatisch Frieden vor und rettet die Bewohner der Festung. Gurdiye, die Schwester Bahram Chubines, ist sowohl Diplomatin als auch Kriegerin. Sie tötet Turk, den chinesischen Feldherrn, und sogar ihren eigenen Ehemann. 6. Die Frau als Künstlerin. Künstlerinnen sind im Shahnameh zahlreich. Musikerinnen, Sängerinnen, Tänzerinnen. Al-Zadeh, die römische Sklavin Bahram Gurs, ist Meisterin im Harfenspiel. Bahram Gur bittet den König Indiens 10.000 Künstler, Frauen und Männer nach Iran zu schicken, um das Volk zu erfreuen. Dies ist eine der ersten dokumentierten Kulturpolitiken der Geschichte. 7. Die Frau als Arbeiterin und Handwerkerin. Krankenschwester, Arme, Hebamme, Friseuse, Küchen, Schneiderin, Botin, all diese Berufe sind im Shahnameh zu finden. Ferdowsi nennt oft nicht die Namen dieser Frauen, aber er beschreibt genau das Produkt ihrer Arbeit. 8. Die Frau als Verführerin und Zauberin. Sudabeh ist das markanteste Beispiel. Sie nutzt ihre Schönheit, um Siavosh zu verführen. Zauberinnen erscheinen auch in den 7 Prüfungen Rostams und Esfandiars. Aus Ferdowsis Sicht ist Magier wie Lüge ein ahrimanisches Attribut und wird verurteilt. Abschließende Bemerkung: Ist Ferdowsi frauenfeindlich? Einige Kritiker haben Ferdowsi aufgrund weniger Verse der Frauenfeindlichkeit bezichtigt. Doch diese Anschuldigung ist völlig unbegründet. Erstens ist die Authentizität dieser Verse umstritten. Zweitens, selbst wenn wir sie akzeptieren, drücken diese Verse Rostams persönliche Meinung über Sudabeh aus, nicht Ferdowsis Sichtweise. Rostam kritisiert Frauen wie Sudabeh, die hinterlistig und zauberisch sind, nicht das weibliche Geschlecht im Allgemeinen. Die 8-teilige Klassifikation, die ich heute präsentiert habe, zeigt, dass Ferdowsi Frauen hinsichtlich ihrer menschlichen Würde, Intelligenz, Weisheit und sozialen Rechte als gleichwertig mit Männern betrachtet. Es stimmt, dass Männer in politischen und kriegerischen Szenen häufiger präsent sind. Dies spiegelt die historische Realität wider. Aber Ferdowsi zeigt, dass Frauen in diesen Bereichen nicht nur etwas zu sagen haben, sondern manchmal besser handeln als Männer. Schlussfolgerung: Der Shahnameh ist mehr als ein nationales Epos. Es ist ein Spiegel der menschlichen Gesellschaft, Eine Gesellschaft, in der Frauen vielfältige und komplexe Rollen spielen. Vom Opfer zu Heldin, von der Mutter zur Königin, von der Künstlerin zur Diplomatin. Ferdowsi erzählt mit realistischem, aber mitfühlendem Blick die Leiden und Errungenschaften der Frauen. Er betrachtet sie weder als Engel noch als Teufel, sondern als Menschen mit all ihren Komplexitäten, Fähigkeiten und ihrer inhärenten Würde. Und vielleicht ist dies die größte Lektion der Shahnameh. Menschlichkeit, nicht Geschlecht, ist das Maß des Wertes. Ich danke Ihnen für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
Well, we thank Dr. Rastegar as well as Mr. Ryan, and we wish Dr. Rastegar a speedy recovery. At this point in the program, we would like to unveil the book Austrian Iranologists. To begin, please watch a short film
Austrian Iranists.
for this subject.
With an introduction by Dr. Nasratollah Rastegar.
A bridge of knowledge and culture, illuminating centuries of intellectual dialogue between Iran and Austria.
This book presents a concise, yet profound portrait of Austrian scholars who, across generations, devoted their lives to the study of Iran's language, history, literature, and civilization. Through their research and cultural mediation, Iran came to be recognized in Europe, not merely as a distant land, but as a vibrant center of human wisdom and creativity, tracing the enduring scholarly and cultural connections between the two nations. The work celebrates a shared legacy of curiosity, respect, and dialogue, inviting contemporary readers to rediscover the timeless bond between Iran and Austria, and to reflect on the living presence of Iranian civilization within the global cultural horizon.
The volume highlights the contributions of
Josef von Hammer-Pockstein, Theodor Kotschi, Alois Sprenger, Jakob Eduard Pollack, Albert Josef Gasteiger, Robert Adam Pollack, Otto von Melzer, Ladislaus von Rapzewitsch, Alfons Gabriel, Karl-Heinz Rechinger, Robert Kostka, Karl Grazi, Bert Fragner, Nosratollah Rastegar,
Dr. Weltka, Dr. Heiler, and Dr. Rolami to come onto the stage for the official unveiling of the book.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have now reached the end of today's program. As I mentioned in the very beginning, tomorrow is dedicated to the online presentation of papers from of colleagues from Iran, and the book abstracts of a conference, or the book of abstracts is also publicly available. So thank you very much for your presence. And yeah, I hope to see you soon in future, wonderful future programs. Yeah, and in the room, in the adjacent room, we have yeah, little refreshments. So if you have been our guests before, then you may know so from Iranian cuisine. So